Good evening. Welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't Africans, the think show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so called African American didn't find himself to America in the trunk of a ship. I'm your host, the Indigenous One. We all are responsible for what goes on this planet, what happens to our environment, what happens to our elders, what happens to our children, what happens to us. We're all responsible for that. I know we live in a matrix that seems like somebody else is responsible for it. No, we are. Tonight, you're about to be introduced or reintroduced to a young man that spends a lot of his time thinking about things and trying to come up with solutions to some of the problems that we face. I don't want to waste no time. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Biko.
Hey man, definitely got to go ahead and clap it up for you there, Mr. Carey, Indigenous One. Definitely appreciate you. Again, always honor to those that came before us, because again, without you dropping that knowledge, I wouldn't be here. As well as other mentors of mine. So again, without further ado, introduce myself again, Chief Biko from the Lost Confederacy channel, and we got a good topic today, y'all. We're gonna be talking about who exactly were the freedmen. Me and the Indigenous One was talking in the background before we came live, and we like to attach ourselves to so many titles instead of just being exactly who we are, which is the indigenous people of this land known as America. So again, we need to clarify who exactly were the freemen, because there's a lot of talk. You'll hear your highly schooled, you're highly educated say that we are the freemen. But I'm here to debunk that, and I'm here to provide proof of claim that we were not the freemen and show exactly who were the freemen. So again, without further ado, jump right into this topic. But to set the stage, paint the picture, set the foundation, we need to start. I'm actually going to start in 1732. Why 1732? Basically because that is when the last colony was established, that last colony being Georgia. And a question I'm going to ask the chat, question I'm going to ask the viewer, question for yourself is, one, why was Georgia established? And two, who actually populated the colony of Georgia? So again, for everybody out there, the viewer, we have two questions as we walk through this timeline to discover who exactly was the freeman. One, why was Georgia established? And two, who actually populated the colony of Georgia? So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll jump straight into it. Excellent. So as we read, we're not going to read through this whole document, just going to read the first paragraph, because that's going to pretty much answer that first question in regards to why was Georgia established. So as we read here, in 1730s, England founded the last of its colonies in North America. The project was the brainchild of James Oglethorpe, a former Army officer. After Oglethorpe left the Army, he devoted himself to helping the poor and debt-ridden people of England, who he suggested settle in America. His choice of Georgia, named after the new king, was also motivated by the idea of creating a defensive buffer for South Carolina, an increasingly important colony with many potential enemies close by. These enemies included the Spanish in Florida, the French in Louisiana, and along the Mississippi River, and these powers' Indian allies throughout the region. Indians, we know, are the Americans. So again, let's not get lost in the words. It's actually here is Americans. But this one paragraph answered that question, why was Georgia established? So Georgia was established as a military buffer state, smack dab too, ironically, right in the heart of what we know as the Creek Confederacy, which is an American form of government, which is what we was running at this time. So it was set up as a military buffer state. And let's look in to see who was populating this colony known as Georgia. As we see here, It states here, it's poor and debt-ridden people of London. So we talking about it's peasants, again, it's poor, it's debtors. Basically, Georgia was a colony used to get rid of England's peasant class, aka a colony full of Annies. Let me ask you, Indigenous one, you're familiar with Annie, the show and everything, right?
Familiar with who?
Annie, you know the little redhead orphan girl?
Yeah, I never watched the
You
movie.
never watched the movie? Well, look, I know she was an orphan, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's all they populated Georgia with was these poor peasant orphans and these prisoners who was the scum of England's underworld, basically. They said, you
Uh-huh.
know what? Let's get rid of all of our prisoners, everybody who's making England, who making London look like trash, and let's dump it here in this colony known as Georgia.
Uh,
And that is very key for us to know.
wow.
Because look, you can walk up to any European, and I want you all to ask them as the viewer, ask them this, ask them when the last time they visited their families in England, or if they even know their family in England. Because see, they'll like to tell us where we come from, say, oh, go back to Africa. But when you ask them, go back to England, and who's your family that you left in England, they don't know. See, we could trace our family back, great grandparents, great grands. We could trace our families back for generations. But you ask a European, oh no, I'm first generation. So all of this little hoopla, no, we really have to start checking them. And this is a key example when I say that they emptied out their debtor prisons, their poor, their peasant class in Georgia for a reason. And again, that's to create a military buffer state and to have a housing area for these newly brought over European peasants who
Wow.
are who are the slave. Absolutely. Any questions on that? I hear you saying, "Wow, man."
No,
Talk to
man.
me.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, that's some information we definitely have to know because it
Mhm.
changes the way you see things.
Absolutely.
Dude, go ahead and
Absolutely.
get it, man. I'm gonna shut up.
All right, all right. Let's go ahead and keep moving forward, man. But again, it is important to note this because this is going to set the foundation of what led, to what is called the Civil War, which we know is the Civil Rebellion, and it's going to identify the group being placed or classified as the Freemen, which we know is these European peasants. Now, again, understanding this, understanding that breakdown, we're going to jump 23 years further. So going from 1732 to 1755, and we're going to jump into what is called the Militia Act of 1755. Make sure everybody good on this. Okay, perfect. So a brief synopsis. I'm not going to go ahead and read through all of this. I'm actually going to make sure that we provide the links for this. That way you all can read at your own leisure because it's very important to have these documents to cite to because we already know they're trying to brainwash our children. I was brainwashed before in the military indoctrination camps called school. So I had to make sure that I cleansed my mind and actually read these documents and figured out what is actually going on our land. But again, this basically here is describing how they set up the ground floor of their military through the militia. Okay. So keep in mind, this is before the US government was established as well. 1755, we know United States government was established 1776. So we have to keep in mind again, this is before the US government was established by these same Europeans. However, this is the ground floor of what would become the US government's military force, which is the militia. So I'm going to ask two questions for you all as the viewer. We want to see, while reading this document, who could be a part of the militia. Since again, we know we weren't colonists. We were in our own tribes, in our own confederacies at this time. So we are not a part of what I'm reading. So we need to see and identify who was a part of these militias. That's going to give us a key indicator of who the freedmen were. So again, this is being established here to fend off Americans. Don't let them get you confused when they say Indians. To fend off the the indigenous people of this land. So I'm gonna just read this little here. As fears of Indian attacks increased, pressure on the assembly grew until Wednesday, November 19th, by the leave of the House Benjamin Franklin, the same Ben Franklin that this government likes to promote as one of its founding fathers, okay? So by the leave of the House, Benjamin Franklin, a member of this House, brought in a bill entitled an act for the better ordering and regulating the military force of this province, which was read the first time in order to lie on the table for perusal of the members. So again, this is the foundational document of what would lead to the United States military force, which is very key. Now, I'm gonna do a quick search because again, we're not gonna go through this whole document. I'm gonna provide this for you. Look, it didn't already popped up. But I'm gonna type in some key words in which they always used to classify us as during this time period. And then, of course, during other reclassification generations. So I'm gonna start with Negro, see if that populates in this. Not found. Okay, let's look to see if we can find Black. No Black. All right, let's go ahead and see if we can find Colored. No colored.
Put more.
More. Look, I'm gonna do MUUR too as well. No more. No more. Hold on. I misspelled it. No more.
African American.
African American. You keep coming with it, man. Keep coming with it. African American. Nothing. So again, none of them,
Negro.
Negro. None of them terms is going to be found in this document. But keep in mind, what's the topic? Who were the freedmen? Let's see if we can find freedmen. Okay. Freedmen. Ooh, we got a couple hits. So I'm gonna start right here. And let me actually increase this for you all as well. Make it a little bigger. Okay. Matter of fact, let me go to the next one. Okay, here we go. So by and with, I'm gonna just drag this all the way down here. By and with the advice and consent of the representatives of the freemen of the said province in General Assembly met, and by the authority of the same, that from and after the publication of this application of this act, it shall and may be lawful for the freemen of this province to form themselves into companies as heretofore they have used in time of war without law. So, question for the chat. We know we aren't European colonists. It's stating freemen of this province, meaning freemen of the province of Pennsylvania, the colony of Pennsylvania. Understanding that, who can be a part of this militia? Drop a 1 in the chat if you think it is the freeman, aka the European, or 2 if you believe it is the American, aka the Negro, Black, etc., etc. I'm gonna ask the question again. We got 1, okay. Who can be a part of the militia? Again, this is prior to the United States government. So it's obviously indicating that freeman is a European term, first and foremost. But secondly, that freemen can be also, or freemen are a part of the militia. So we have to ask ourselves, are we freemen? This is dealing with European colonists. Remember that. So why does our highly educated, our highly schooled of our class want to link us to the term freeman when this is a clear document prior to the establishment of the United States government that is establishing a clear correlation between the freemen being the colonists, and we know that freeman, again, is a European term, because again, these are European or England colonists, just to be even more specific. Pennsylvania was a colony set up by who? England. The province of what? Pennsylvania, meaning these freemen are from the colony of Pennsylvania or live within the colony because they're not from this land. So I'm gonna reiterate, they're not from this land, they're from England. Correct. So I see we got a lot of 1. So everybody's in alignment with who can be a part of this militia. So if we know that, again, who were the freemen of this said province? Were they European colonists or Americans? I think we all can agree that they were European colonists and not Americans, meaning us, the Negro, the Black, the colored, etc., etc. And also, you know, if this is still unclear, let's just take a look at the definition of the word freeman, because again, like I stated earlier, this is a European term, the word freeman. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. We can pull up the definition. Hold on, didn't give me the link. So we can just see what the definition, again, according to them, what the definition of a freeman is, okay? So the word has various meanings at different stages of history. In Roman law, it denoted one who was either born free or emancipated and was the opposite of slave. In feudal law meaning underneath monarchies, lords, etc., everything that England had going on in regards to their system, how they ran things. It says here, it designated an allodial proprietor as distinguished from a vassal or feudal tenant, basically meaning that they had to pay to a lord. That's where you get the term landlord from. Let's see here, English law. The word described a freeholder or a tenant by free services, one who was not a villain. So again, it's stating here that this term originated from England. It's a European term, which means that it relates to Europeans. So again, we have to ask ourselves, why do our highly schooled want to attach us to the freedmen when it's clearly stating that this originates from a European term, more precisely an English term? Now, you may say, okay, well, shoot, this says freedmen, but on the act, it says freedmen. They're different words. Okay, let's see if they're actually different words. Let's go ahead and dig a little deeper into that as well. Let's go ahead and dig a little deeper into that. So we'll look up the definition for freedmen. In Roman law, one who set free from a state of bondage and emancipated slave. So that's the same definition as this one. Denoted one who was either born free or emancipated, opposite of slave. Now, let's look at this second part of this definition, because this is really going to be how they like to say one thing, but history and this US government's laws say another thing. All right. So after we see what the initial definition is, it says the word is used in the same sense in the United States respecting Negroes who were formerly slaves. Interesting. This is very interesting to point out. And it is key to point out because this definition is saying it relates to Negroes under the United States. Now, I'm going to highlight as we move forward through this timeline how history and this government's laws tell a different story than what this last sentence in that definition states, that freedmen are the Negroes. So we're going to go ahead and walk through this and see if that exactly what is actually going on. So as we move from the Militia Act, 1755, as we move from, again, the establishment of Georgia, the next thing we want to highlight in this timeline is that Homestead Act. And this is very key as well. Again, this here is the Homestead Act of 1862. All right. So first question to the chat, put a 1 if you believe we were, put a 2 if you believe we weren't, or if you know we weren't. Were we citizens of the United States government in 1862? Put a 1 if you believe we were, put a 2 if you believe we weren't. Again, were we citizens of the United States government in 1862? Put a 1 if you believe we were citizens. Put a 2 if you believe we weren't. So I see we got a 2 in the chat. Excellent. Got another 2. All right. Perfect. So it seems like we're all in alignment in regards to this. Got another 2. Everybody's in alignment that we were not citizens in 1862 underneath the United States government. Now, making sure that we're keeping up with the timeline. 1755, there was no United States government. 1862, the United States government has been established, and we are all in alignment that we were not citizens of this government, okay? Now, let's go ahead and break this document down. So if you're not familiar, just give a brief synopsis before we jump into it. The Homestead Act is for the European United States citizen and the European coming over to the United States to be able to possess 80 to 160 acres of our land that has been stolen, that has been taken from us through murder, unlawful wars, etc., etc. So this is what this document is pertaining to. Okay. So let's go ahead and read this first little sentence here. Go ahead and make this a little bigger on my end. All right. So being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that any person who is the head of a family or who has arrived at the age of 21 years and is a citizen of the United States, or who shall have filed his declaration of intention to become a citizen of the United States, as required by the Naturalization laws of the United States, and who has never borne arms against the United States government or given aid and comfort to his enemies shall, from and after the 1st January 1863, be entitled to enter 1/4 section or less a quantity of unappropriated public lands. So I'm gonna stop right there. So this is very key, all right? One, before we jump into it, they're giving 4 qualifications for the European United States citizen in order to qualify for this land. 1, you have to be a head of a family. 2, be at least 21 years of age. 3, be a United States citizen or have filed paperwork. Very key on that, filed paperwork to become a citizen. Let me ask you all, I'm pretty much sure it's a rhetorical question. How many of your grandparents or great-grandparents have immigration papers? If your great-grandparent, great-great-grandparent, your great-grandma, your grandma from this land, why do we not, as in general thought, a group, believe we are American or believe we aren't American? When they're clearly showing that it's a process to become a U.S. citizen. Yet we can't go back in our records and find any paperwork saying we were anything other than American. We don't have any immigrant paperwork, things of that nature. So that's very key. So again, have to be a head of household, be at least 21 years of age, be a U.S. citizen, or at least have filed paperwork to become such. And the most important thing, because again, we can't have a freedman without a civil rebellion, because that's what they said we got the term freedman from after the Civil War, right? So this last statement here, it says, also, who has never borne arms against the United States government or given aid and comfort to his enemies. So they're making a clear distinction between this new European U.S. citizen who's either been on this land since the colonies or who is coming fresh off the boat to become a U.S. citizen, that, hey, you're able to qualify for this if you meet these 4 requirements, and the most important one being that you could never have been rebelled against the U.S. government. Makes sense. So now, understanding that they're making a clear distinction between the new class of European off the boat and the old class that was highlighted in the establishment of Georgia. Remember, peasants, poor, debt-ridden, prisoners, the scum of their country. Remember that. This document is also highlighting the qualifications again for the European that wants to become a U.S. citizen. The most important, again, being that you cannot have borne arms against the United States government. So now, understanding that, you can kind of start to see why one class of European turned U.S. citizen wants to rebel against another class. Make sense? Because again, we're not U.S. citizens of this government. We have nothing to do with these documents, but they're going to tell us everything we need to know in regards to who the freedman is. So now we're painting that picture. Kerry, you got any questions?
Oh, brother, I'm just going along for the ride. Keep
Excellent.
on flying, dude.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So again, one was poor, debt-ridden, which means they had to work off their debt as slaves to become a freeman. The other, poor as well, could qualify for 80 up to 160 acres of land. And the most important thing is that it was debt-free, which we're going to jump to in section 4 of this document. And be it further enacted that no lands acquired under the provisions of this act shall in any event become liable to the satisfaction of any debt or debts contracted prior to the issuing of the patent therefore. So I just highlighted before when we first started this bill, 1735, they were poor, debt-ridden London peasants. They had to work off their debt to become a freedman. These new Europeans coming fresh off the boat, they're saying, hey, as long as you meet those 4 qualifications, look, the land that you will qualify for, you do not have to pay anything on it. Debt-free. No taxes, no property taxes, no mortgage liens, no renting, no leases, nothing. Again, this is all our land, but we're just breaking down their structure because we need to know these things, especially when it comes to identifying where we are within this government. Because again, they're not talking about us. They're talking about these Europeans, okay? So we definitely got to make sure we understand that. Now, we start to see again why one group of Europeans and the US citizens rebelled against another. So with that being said, we're going to jump into another document that are highly skewed, love to say, correlated with us or was for us, and that's an Emancipation Proclamation, okay? So let me go ahead and copy this link. Now, that was May 20th, 1862, as far as the Homestead Act. This is January 1st, 1863. So we're talking about, what's that? 7 to 8 months later, okay? Now, question for the chat. Is a proclamation law? Drop a 1 if you believe it is. Drop a 2 if you believe it isn't. Again, is a proclamation law? Because we need to understand these things. We need to understand our enemy's language, defenses, and plans if we are ever to combat them and ultimately take our land back. Because this is very key, and this is very key because this continues to happen today in regards to proclamations, aka announcements, news. Okay, so everybody's in alignment, and we understand that it's not law. Okay, so understanding that, let's just break it down. Let's go ahead and jump into this first paragraph here. So it states here that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, again, not our Lord, this European's Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then thenceforward and forever free, and the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no acts to repress such persons or any of them in any effort they may make for their actual freedom. So it's a lot to unpack in here, but key highlight: who recognizes the newly freed slave? And before we answer that question, or while we answer that question, we need to understand this government plans, its operating procedures, how it works, okay? So we understand there's 3 branches of this U.S. government, right? You got the executive branch, legislative, and judicial. Let's see again which branch recognizes this newly freed European slave. And it clearly states here that the executive branch recognizes this. So understanding that, and going back to that first question that I asked you all, is a proclamation law? This clearly is stating that the president and the executive branch in totality is recognizing the newly freed slave. Yet, the president doesn't write law. Who makes law? For people in the chat. We going back to something in school now. We learning a system. Who makes law underneath this government? Out of those three branches, executive, legislative, and judicial, who makes law? Absolutely, Mikey. Absolutely. Legislative, Congress. That's why you'll see in certain documents, it'll say, be it enacted, the Senate and the House of Representatives, Congress assembled. Definitely pick up on these key words when you're reading these documents, because one, it's going to say, okay, this one actually has some teeth behind it versus a proclamation just being an announcement. Anybody can make an announcement. Okay? So that's very key. Absolutely, Horace. Congress. Okay? So let's just play devil's advocate for a minute, okay? I want y'all to vibe with me on this one. So let's play devil's advocate, and let's just say that, you know, this Emancipation Proclamation did pertain to us, right? Even if this document pertained to us, it is not law, which means it holds no weight. It is just political theater. It's the same thing that happens today when the president makes, you know, a State of the Union address and mentions our group for 15 seconds. We'll go back to earlier this month, President Biden talking about Tyre Nichols' family, right? Oh, how we need to stop the violence and so forth and so on. And you'll see the bougie of our group, these are niggas, get up and clap for 15 seconds and sit their ass back down like that was something to be proud about. But there's no laws that were made to prevent things like Tyre Nichols, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. The list goes on. So again, your proclamation is worthless. Make sense? Your proclamation is worthless. So let's continue to build. So again, knowing that, why do we think, and I'm speaking, you know, in general amongst our people, that we were the freedmen, aka the newly freed slaves, especially when we know this government has never in its history written any laws specific to our group? Why do we believe such thing? It's really a question we have to ask ourselves. If we want to attach ourselves to these terms, why aren't these terms working for us underneath this government? Because as we'll see later on, as we continue to build, the freedmen have a whole act. So if we're the freedmen, and this act again is law since Congress wrote it, why aren't we getting what the freedman has? Simple answer is we're not the freedmen. We know that again because this government has never written laws for us. So let's continue to build here. The next document we're going to jump into as we continue to walk through this timeline is a very special one, man. Look, they even have Afro-American. We're going to read this document and see if Afro-American is even in this goddamn document. Because this is a part of the lie, the part of the narrative that continues to get spilled as well. Don't make no sense, y'all. So this one here is Special Field Order 15, which, again, is something that's propped up. You've probably seen Instagram Reels, Facebook Shorts about Special Order 15 gave the Negro 40 acres. Ain't no mule, but 40 acres, right? Okay. I'm going to ask the question again. Who makes law? You already answered it. It's Congress, right? So why are we propping up a general as if this is law? Come on, y'all. We gotta call them out on this bullshit, because this is the same stuff that's being taught to the next generation and the generation after that. Hell, at this point, they're not even going to talk about nothing regarding this stuff. See, a lot of the young children now storming out of colleges and universities and so forth. So we have to be able to educate our own to make sure that they understand exactly what is going on underneath this government. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. Let's see here. So this section 1, brief synopsis, basically describes the area the Negroes were located. The military describes us as Negroes. However, Lincoln never stated Negro in that proclamation. Okay. Congress also never declared war, but Major General Sherman states in his document acts of war. So let's go ahead and dig into it. The islands from Charleston south, we abandoned the abandoned rice fields from the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of the Negroes, now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. Now, y'all, I know I got glasses on, but damn, y'all tell me, am I blind? Did y'all see Negroes in that document? For those who were here earlier when we did a quick search,
Right. No.
not at all, right?
Right.
But this general is saying that the Negroes made free by the acts of war and the proclamation. So you see how they'll lie to one another to make sure we don't get shit. So we had to pick up on these things, y'all. We got to. So I'm gonna describe section 2, just in its totality. I'm gonna highlight key points, okay? So basically, section 2 of this document, it describes us as Black. As we can see here, Blacks. So not only are we Negro, we're Blacks as well. And you'll see even folks like President Biden say African Americans, Black people, people of color. Goddamn, pick one. We all of these things? So make it make sense, y'all. So again, highlights us as Blacks, another classification term for Americans that did not go to Oklahoma during the Trail of Tears. This also, in this section, proves our military occupation. So again, going back to that 1755 Militia Act, we are seeing the expansion of their military force. The only whites permitted to reside in this area were officers and soldiers on duty. Again, this states that we are under laws of war, and this sets the term for Negro citizenship within this document. Now I'm gonna highlight exactly where that states the officers for duty. Go here. So, okay. So no white person, whatever, unless military officers and soldiers detailed for duty will be permitted to reside. And the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the free people themselves, subject only to the United States military authority and the acts of Congress. By the laws of war, the orders of the President of the United States, the Negro is free and must be dealt with as such. So if we free, but the only people that can be around us is your military, what does that
You
mean?
ain't free.
You ain't free. You under military occupation, correct?
Check.
Because they said no whites, unless you got them straps, can reside or are permitted to reside within their area. Because they're gonna fuck y'all up. So you better come strapped. You better be an officer on duty or a soldier. So again, what this is highlighting again is one, our military occupation, but also it's going to highlight what we have to do in order to become citizens. So let me see here. So they're basically saying that the young and able-bodied Negroes must be encouraged to enlist as soldiers in the service of the United States to contribute their share towards maintaining their own freedom, and securing their rights as citizens of the United States. Negroes so enlisted will be organized into companies, battalions, and regiments under the order of the United States military authorities and will be paid, fed, clothed according to law. The bounties paid on the enlistment may, with the consent of the recruit, go to assist his family and settlement in procuring agricultural implements, seeds, tools, boats, clothing, and other articles necessary for their livelihood. A bunch of bullshit at the end here. So as we continue here in section 3, this is where we're going to see that 40-acre allotment, okay? This is where we're going to see that. So I want you all to pay close attention. Again, we're seeing that the Negro, according to this order, is coming up underneath the War Department or the laws of war. It's stating that no white should be within this area. And now when we go here, they're going to be describing pretty much the allotment that they're able to get, okay? So as we see here, whenever 3 respectable Negroes, heads of families, shall desire to settle on land and shall have selected for that purpose an island or a locality clearly defined within the limits above designated, and the inspector of settlements and plantations will himself, or by such subordinate officers as he may obtain, give them a license to settle such island or district and afford them such assistance as he can to enable them to establish a peaceable agricultural settlement. The 3 parties named will subdivide the land under the supervision of the inspector among themselves and such others as may choose to settle near. And for each family shall have a plot not more than 40 acres of tillable ground. And when it borders, I think it says a body of water, borders on some water channel with not more than 800 feet front. This is very key to look into. Again, it's saying that the Negro, specifically the Negro, is allotted to 40 acres, but it also highlights, it said, what does it say here? Inspector of settlements and plantations. So now when we think of plantations, I want you all to understand that a plantation was not some family of 5 with 100 niggas on their land. That don't even make common sense. Why would 100 people just let 5 people do them dirty like that? Now we're seeing that plantations was big business. They were ran by military. So I need everyone to understand that, because that's very key, especially when the story gets told about our people being enslavement. No, we were not slaves. We were under military occupation due to unlawful wars, i.e. prisoners of war. But no, we were not slaves at all. Again, the slave was that European peasant coming off that boat to work off its debt to to those European nations, to England and others. Okay. So I'm gonna briefly go through a summary of what Section 4 is. So Section 4 basically just describes the Negro prisoners of war rights. Section 5 describes the general officer's duties, basically having a Negro come up underneath that War Department, as stated earlier. And then we see here in Section 6 that it describes Brigadier General Saxton being over the inspector of settlements of plantations, which again just further proves that military occupation. So again, when we think of plantations, i.e. military work camps, there wasn't a family, again, with 100 Negroes. Those of us that were in these work camps were under, again, military occupation. So to sum up this particular document, it highlights 1, a field order is not law, so it holds no weight. 2, this document clearly specifies who was getting these allotments, the Negro, not freedmen. And 3, lastly, it proves our military occupation underneath this government. Okay? So, understanding that, now let's move to a lawful document underneath this government, because again, we understand that this is not a lawful document. This is only an order from a military general, so it holds no weight. So we're going to move to a lawful document underneath this government that clearly specifies who actually gets these 40 acres. And let's see if it's the Negro, okay? So we have here the Freedmen's Bureau Act of 1865. Now, we just got done with the special field order. That was January 16th of the same year. So now we're in March, a little less than 2 months later. So understanding that, let me see here. So we see within these first few sentences that we're going to read that this does not apply to the Negro, okay? So let's jump into it. Being enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, again, that same verbiage that they use when writing law, that there is hereby established in the War Department, again, something similar that we saw in the special field order, to continue during the present war of rebellion, not war, and for 1 year thereafter, a Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, to which shall be committed, as hereinafter provided, the supervision and management of all abandoned lands and the control of all subjects relating to refugees and freedmen from rebel states. So boom, refugees and freedmen from rebel states. I had to ask the question again to the chat. Were we U.S. citizens in 1865 or prior? Drop a 1 if you believe we were. Drop a 2 if you believe we weren't. Were we U.S. citizens in 1865 or prior? Because this is clearly stating that the refugees and freedmen from where? The rebel states, meaning that they were a part of these states. We not a part of these states. So again, why do the schooled, the highly indoctrinated, I'm gonna call them, the highly brainwashed of our community, our group, say that we're the freedmen when everybody's in alignment that we were not a part of this government in 1865 or prior? So again, how can we be refugees and freedmen from states we were never a part of? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. And again, if we know this government has never written laws specific for us, why do those people who are highly indoctrinated in these history books and things of that nature say otherwise or attach ourselves to this freedman title? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Now, I will have these links dropped as well, because again, we're not going to go through them in its entirety. I will summarize them up for you, but I will have these links dropped for you all to read through on your own time. Again, I will go ahead and make sure we can summarize these for you. Shout out to, appreciate that, Kerry, for dropping that.
Yeah, I dropped them a couple of times in there. I'll drop them a few more times as we go on.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So let's go ahead and jump into section 2. Again, just a brief little summary. Section 2 is basically just going to describe the Secretary of War and their responsibilities. We see here section 3 is going to describe the president's powers with consent of the Senate, meaning with consent of this of Congress, of law. And also section 4, which is key because section 4 describes the 40-acre allotment terms, okay? So let's take a look at section 4. Section 4, and be it further enacted that the commissioner, under the direction of the president, shall have the authority to set apart for the use of loyal refugees and freedmen such tracts of land within the insurrectionary states as shall have been abandoned or to which the United States shall have acquired title by confiscation or sale or otherwise, and to every male citizen, whether refugee or freeman, as aforesaid, there shall be assigned not more than 40 acres of such land, and the person to whom it was so assigned shall be protected in the use and enjoyment of the land for the term of 3 years at an annual rent not exceeding 6 cents per centum upon the value of the land. So this is very key. This here is very key. So similar language to what we saw in that special field order, but, and I'm gonna do a quick find, I'm not seeing any Negro, I'm not seeing any blacks. I'm seeing refugees and freedmen from rebel states. But also it's cool to highlight here that they had to pay rent. So understanding, going back to the Homestead Act, okay? Making this all come together, painting that picture for you guys. Going back to the Homestead Act, it stated that, hey, you, as long as you meet those 4 qualifications, head of family, over the age of 21, a U.S. citizen, or filing to become a U.S. citizen and have never rebelled against this government, you can qualify to 80 and up to 160 acres debt-free. This, on the other hand, is saying, hey, for the first 3 years, you're going to have to at least pay rent since y'all want to rebel against your own government. Make sense? So they're not throwing the whole European away, but they're saying we ain't going to give you the same amount of resources, of luxury that we did the Europeans that was behaving underneath this government. Make sense? And as we do that, let's go ahead and type in Negro. The same thing that we did earlier there, Kerry. Black, blacks, nothing. Colored, African American, Moor, you name it, you're not going to find it in these documents.
No, man, I think if you type in Hebrew Israelite, something will come up.
That might pop up. You're absolutely right. I forgot about them. Hebrew, hell, I don't even know how to spell the Israelite right there. I'm just going to put Hebrew and see if what comes up. So we're seeing again that your religious belief, your none of that stuff matters. Because at the end of the day, nothing is going to be written for you underneath this government. Starting to make sense, y'all? We starting to see the picture. We're starting to understand that this Freedmen Bureau and this act, and those that say, okay, this is alignment or this pertains to us, is not true. Again, history and this government's laws tell a different story from the lie, aka narrative, aka school book, indoctrination camps tell. So we definitely have to understand that. Now, if you're still in belief, if you still believe the Freedman title actually applies to us, the American, and not the European peasant, aka US citizen, I have one more document that will solidify who the Freedman actually is. Okay? And that document is the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So we're going to jump straight into it. Boom. So, Civil Rights Act, 1866. All right. Before we jump into it, I'm going to do another quick search because we got to see where we come up underneath this government, y'all. Again, they're saying we the freedmen, but none of their documents are specifying Negro or Negro actually being the freedman. We just read the Special Field Order 15, said nothing about the Negro becoming the freedman. It said Negroes made free. Again and again, that's not even law. So that really was just, again, proclamation, propaganda, news, bullshit. Now, let's go ahead, do another search. At this point, I need to have this thing automatically populating. Blacks, nah, it ain't in there. You see what we got colored. Oh, we got color. That's close, but no cigar. Let's see what else we got. African American. Yeah, they ain't got African. They definitely ain't got American. What we said, Hebrew. Can't forget the Moors. Yeah, none of these documents or none of these individuals are in this document. And let's read this little first inkling here of what this is supposed to pertain to. So an act to protect all persons in the United States in their civil rights and furnish the means of their vindication. So again, let's just play devil's advocate, okay? Let's just say this Civil Rights Act of 1866 did apply to us. And let's just see if the freedman is also in this document while we at it. Perfect. Okay, cool. So let's just say we are the freedmen, right? And that the Civil Rights Act of 1866 applies to us. Let's go ahead and see what all rights we have now, right? So as we see here, we'll have the right to make and enforce contracts, to sue, to be parties and give evidence, to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property, and to full and equal benefits of all laws and proceedings for the security of person and property, as is enjoyed by the white citizens. That's amazing. And shall be subject to like punishment, pains, and penalties, and to none other any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom to the contrary notwithstanding. So we supposed to get all the rights of the white man. Again, we playing devil's advocate. We saying that the Civil Rights Act of 1866 applies to us, and we are the freedmen, y'all. We done finally found ourselves in the document. Well, let's actually dig a little deeper to see what else the freedmen can do or what can happen with the freedmen, okay? So, Carrie, I'm gonna ask you, are you familiar with the word posse comitatus? Or is anybody in the chat familiar with that word, posse comitatus? Just put a 1 if you do. If you are, put a 2 if you aren't. And I'll do a quick little Google search for the definition of that, okay? So let me know, put a 1 if you're familiar with the word posse comitatus. If not, put a 2. So I'm gonna show y'all something that's gonna blow y'all mind, and it's gonna pretty much just put a nail in the coffin. I think we all pretty much know that we aren't the freedmen. But if you were on the fence on whether or not we are the freedmen or we aren't, what I'm gonna show you all is that we are. So you all aren't familiar with that word. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna do a quick little, go ahead and do a little Google search. Posse comitatus. So everybody can see this. It states here, in British and American law, a posse comitatus is a group of people who are mobilized by the sheriff to suppress lawlessness in the county. Very interesting. So a group of people who are mobilized by the sheriff to suppress lawlessness in the county. I'm gonna ask y'all in the chat, that sounds familiar. That sounds real familiar to me. Y'all ever heard of people being deputized? Y'all ever heard stories of groups of white European US citizens being deputized and being empowered to run into our homes, grab your uncle, your nephew, your pops, your grandpa? Does that ring a bell for y'all? Drop a 1 if that rings a bell. Regular bystanders, regular civilians being deputized to run up in your shit, grab everything and anybody who they want, and just take them on down to wherever they want to take them. That sound familiar? But let's read this, because this is supposed to be what is done or what can be done for the freedmen. The freedmen should be able to deputize themselves and take somebody along and implement their own justice. So let's go ahead and read this. I'm gonna start here. The persons so appointed. Hold on. Let me jump up with this. So we got my dang thing tripping on me. So the person so appointed to execute any warrant or process as aforesaid shall have authority to summon and call to their aid the bystanders or posse comitatus of the proper county or such portion of the land or naval forces of the United States or of the militia as may be necessary to the performance of the duty with which they are charged. I don't know if y'all really understood what I just read there, y'all. I'm gonna read it again. The person so appointed to execute any warrant or process as aforesaid shall have the authority to call upon any bystander, aka posse comitatus, of the proper county of such portion of the land or naval forces of the United States or of the militia as may be necessary to the performance of the duty which they are charged. So let me ask y'all this. If we are citizens, or if the 1866 Civil Rights Act applies to us, again, the newly freed slave, the freedmen, and again, we are the freedmen, when have you ever known Negroes to make a posse and lynch a cracker in their town square? When have you ever known Negroes to make a posse and lynch a cracker in their town square?
Never.
Never. But this is saying that the freedman, which is now a U.S. citizen, another example of why we aren't the freedmen, is able to be called upon, aka Emmett Till, aka any other story you want to hear from the 1950s. Grab a nigga out his house, take him to the square, lynch him broad daylight, nothing happens. Really make that sink in. This is a law, y'all. They're saying we could deputize any individual and make it as long as it's necessary for the performance that we're going to enact. And that performance would be the performance of us hanging from fucking trees. Hanging from freaking trees, man. Let me see here. Yeah, exactly, Tyrone. I couldn't have said it more, man. I couldn't have said it better. So understanding that, that's a nail in the coffin, that we know that this did not apply to us at all. At all. But I'm going to show you who it applied to. Y'all remember, who familiar with, the Titanic? The Titanic, Jack and Rose, supposed to be one of the highest grossing films in, United States history. I'm gonna show y'all exactly who the freedman was. We go ahead and copy this link because folks got it twisted as if we are these people. So I'm gonna show this here. This Jack right here. This the freedman. Let me make this a little bigger for y'all. Now what is screen? This the freedman. Exactly. Exactly. Attaching you to something that they know never belonged to you. That term freedman is not us at all. But let me see. Are you all able to see the image on my screen? I'm not sure.
No.
You said no?
Oh, here we go.
Okay, perfect. So this the freedmen, y'all. Them Europeans was coming over here on them boats, y'all. Not us. They were the ones stacked on top of each other. Not us. Let's take a look at this. This them. This Jack. In the barracks, y'all. In the bottom of the barrel. Anybody familiar with the term steerage? We're going to look up that term. So we can see here. Eastern Europe. These are these freedmen. These Europeans fresh off these boats. Third class berth room. Stacked on top of each other. They're the ones coming from filth to a better land, a new clean land. This is them. I got some more pictures to share for y'all. Because this is extremely important for us to understand and grasp. Take a look at this. Packed on that motherfucker. Damn, I don't know if it's going to say saying click to full. Hold on, let me back up for y'all because I know it ain't showing. All right, packed on that motherfucker. Look at that, y'all. Look at them. But they say we were stacked on top of each other. All we see is sketches, motherfuckers lined up like planks saying we came from Africa. When it's them. It's them. It's them, y'all. Look at this. You can't even move in this bitch. You got folks sitting on I don't even know what these called, sitting on top of this. Coming over here to our land to get that Homestead Act, to become U.S. citizens, etc. Live the American dream is what they call it. Hell, I'm gonna show another document. Because at this point we just having fun with it, Kerry. I think everybody.
You killing it.
At this point, we just having fun with it, man. I'm gonna show y'all a document. This here is with poor immigrants to America, okay? So I'm gonna read this bottom little section. All right. So the common citizen is becoming the watchdog of the police service. Ain't that what the what is that? The 1866 Civil Rights Act just stated? The common citizen becoming deputized. Tammany has fallen. Women are getting the suffrage. Again, for our females, all that feminist movement bullshit, that wasn't for our group of women. That's for these Europeans. They was the ones getting treated like dogs. We always had respect for our women, but we understood it was a hierarchy. So you understand this? The women are getting the suffrage state by state. The nation is unanimous in its cry for a pure state, a clear country, and an unincorporated people. All diseases are to be healed. Couples who wish to be married must produce health certificates because they was nasty as fuck. We just seen that picture. They all on top of each other. And we know that's a long journey from Europe over to the Americas, especially via boat. So who knows what kind of diseases they was coming over here tracking from, again, Europe or wherever, European countries they were coming from. The mental deficient and the hereditary criminals are to be segregated. blue books, or rather what the Americans call white books, are going to form the Bible of a new nation. The day is going to be rationally divided into 8 hours work, 8 hours pleasure, 8 hours sleep, or rather, 8 hours looking at machinery, 8 hours pleasure, 8 hours sleep. For machinery is going to accomplish all the ugly toil. They happy as hell, y'all. We ain't got to work on our feet and hands no more. All we got to do is just look at the machines and they'll do the work for us. This is amazing. All the inventions that we made, they reap benefits from. We're reading it right here. Everybody is to be well dressed, well housed, comfortable. America is raging. America is raging against the exploitation of immigrants and against the fate of the white slave. I could just drop the mic right there. Against anyone who has done anything immoral or immoral, but against the fate of the white slave. They knew they were slaves, y'all. The word slave is a European word. So again, don't attach yourselves to these fucking terms that were meant and invented for their people. Just highlighted freeman as a European term. We ain't no fucking freeman. And don't let nobody ever tell you that. You stand on who you are. You American. You stand on the actual tribe you come from. Should never let one of these Europeans come and say they're American. That's a slap in our face. That's a slap in our grandmother's, our ancestors' face. You ain't no fucking American. U.S. citizen, maybe. I'm American. And we got to stand on that, y'all. We got to stand on that. So, just some questions, that we got to ask. Our grandparents, we know, they ain't have no immigration papers. And again, the 1866 Civil Rights Act, if that act really applied to us and we were the freedmen, then why the hell did we need a Malcolm, a MLK, or the Civil Rights Act of the 1960s? There would be no need for that if we were actually freedmen and a part of the 1866 Civil Rights Act. Not at all. The lies are used, absolutely. Absolutely. And shit, even in the 60s Civil Rights Acts of the 19, the 60s and shit, they don't even specify our group. Yet, again, are highly schooled, and the narrative is that they apply to us. So again, at this point, we just having fun with it. But I'm gonna highlight, again, do another quick search, because again, this is always what they talk about every American History Month, that the Civil Rights Acts applied to us. This is what MLK fought for and all the bullshit. We don't see no Negro. We don't see no black. We don't see no colored. We see color of law. What you say, Kerry? We don't see no Hebrew, no Moors, none of this shit. Yet, this is supposed to be for us. This is supposed to have stopped Jim Crow laws. Mind you, them same Jim Crow laws that was very specific on who could not eat in those restaurants, who could not frequent those hotels, those movie theaters, those public parks. So again, I hope I painted a vivid picture for you all. And again, just hammer down that nail in the coffin that we were not the freedmen. That term did not apply to us. And again, there has never been any laws written underneath this government that are specifically for our group of people. And it's a shame that, we have a lot of older people of our group that want to continue to perpetuate this narrative. That is so mind-boggling to me, man. It's so mind-boggling to me. Like we was talking about earlier there, Carrie, in regards to, understanding the atrocities. Again, they were the ones taking our family members up to town square, hanging them in goddamn town squares and things like that. Then we allow our children to be taught by these same individuals who was posing, taking pictures, literally posing and taking pictures of our hanging bodies. But we thought that was okay to allow our children to be taught by them? Make it make sense, y'all. I need y'all to, folks in the chat, if anybody's, remember those times, man, I need y'all to explain that to me. I'm a young fella. And it just not adding up to me.
Okay, I got a couple of questions from folks, man.
Okay, go ahead.
Question number one: how does he explain all of us listed as freedmen before 1865?
Easy. Just like the 1964 Act, nothing is specific, but you were able to slide through. Let me ask you this: you were listed as freedmen. Do you know if your folks had them 40 acres? Do you know if your folks
should know, right?
Huh?
They should know, right?
They should know, right?
Uh-huh.
So just because your name is listed as freedman,
right.
You just read documents. Did you have them same rights in 1866? If so, 1960 should have been nothing. So again, we may get caught up in the labels and the titles. Yeah, some of us may have skirted through. Absolutely, that's perfect. Excellent. But when them cops pull up, they ain't asking, oh, you freedman? Not at all. You don't give a fuck what you is. We see your skin color.
Right. The other question is, what about family records that list us on Freedmen's Bureau, which really was an Indian savings and loan?
The same thing, because we haven't gotten into it quite yet, but we'll see who a specific law was written for. Now, I'm giving y'all a little preview, but the 1868 Civil Rights Act is really for the Indian that did not go west of the Mississippi into Oklahoma Territory. So again, as I stated before, your family may have slid through as a freedman. But again, looking at the laws, looking at this history, did your family actually benefit from being labeled as freedmen?
Okay, last question.
Mm-hmm.
What is all this in context to the Civil War?
Excellent question. So in context to the Civil War, we first have to understand that there was no Civil War. I'm going to pull up a document to show you exactly who declares war. That is Congress. If anybody in the chat, anybody ever can show me a document where Congress declared war, I will shut up on this topic regarding that there was no Civil War. We have an amnesty proclamation from Andrew Jackson stating that it was a rebellion. We have multiple documents. We've seen it even in these documents that I've shown today, that it was a rebellion. Now, I want you all to understand that when I say there was no Civil War, that does not mean that people were not fighting. What I'm saying is that Congress never declared it. And if Congress never declared it, then all that shit is unlawful. We understand that there was a Seminole War, right? But Congress never declared it. And again, the Seminole War and Civil War or Civil Rebellion go hand in hand. What that Civil Rebellion or that Civil War you want to say, that was just a mask. We come from confederacies. That's an American form of government. Okay? So we really got to understand that. That's an American form of government, a confederacy. Their own president at the time said the pretend confederacy, meaning that you Europeans can't be a part of no damn confederacy. That's for the Americans. Stop with the bullshit. But the narrative is that the United States beat the Confederacy. So the world understands that we come from confederacies. So they're seeing, oh, the United States beat the Confederacy. So they've completely taken over the land. Again, what is it called? The Creek Confederacy, the Iroquois Confederacy. That ring a bell for you all?
Yep.
So understanding that and understanding how they play the game, let's make a pretend confederacy from these rebel states. Let's name them the Confederacy, have them go against the Union, United States. Let's beat them, have them join up under. We confiscate their land because we saw in that title in the, I want to say Freedmen's Bureau, it said confiscated land of title, confiscate our land while they're fighting against their own Europeans. So now you start to see how we're getting roped off slowly and surely through the textbooks as well as through their law. But again, their law will never state that it was a war, and their law will never state that there was an actual confederacy because they know that was pretend. Let me see if I can pull up that Constitution just so I can give you all that definition. So I like to make sure that I'm giving you all exactly where I'm getting this information from. So we could share this screen for me real quick, Carrie, and we'll go from there. So we got Article 1, Section 8, that's going to list off the powers of Congress, okay? We already stated early in the chat who has the power to write law? Congress, right? So let's go ahead and scroll down here. So, Section 8. So it states here, here we are, okay. Congress has the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. Congress has that power, not the president, not the judicial branch. Congress has the power to declare war. But also another key point in this is that they make rules concerning the captures on land and water. So again, we have these unlawful wars being waged, the Seminole Wars, this rebellion, the Civil Rebellion. And throughout all of these unlawful wars, there's capturing our land, our water, our resources, our inventions, etc., etc. That makes sense, y'all? So if we are not able to be provided a declaration of war, i.e. a declaration of the Seminole War, or a declaration of this Civil War, then that means all of our shit, according to their documents, was taken unlawfully, which means all of that shit needs to be given back. But we know they're not going to give it back. We can show them these documents all day till we red in the face. Hey, look, this is what your law, your rules and regulations, your procedures say you're supposed to do, and you didn't do it. They're going to look at us. Okay, and take the shit back. And are we willing to take the shit back? That's the question. That's the question. So at the end of the day, all we're doing is providing proof of claim, showing you exactly what the documents say, how it lines up with history. Because again, I'm sure I have family members who are listed as freedmen. I have a great friend of my mother's whose last name is Freedmen. But again, she living in the same conditions as me. Just like those who may be on reservations. Yeah, you may have your nationality, but you living in the same conditions or worse than the rest of the group. So fuck the title. Are you gonna fight with us to take the land back? Plain and simple.
Well, brother, that was excellent. Are there any questions in the chat for this brother? If so, please state them now. Gotta get him the next time he comes back.
For sure, for sure. And definitely, before we close out, definitely want to again give all flowers and praise to you there, Carrie, man. You were the first one to open up your channel for the Lost Confederacy, for our group, to be able to give this information, especially regarding the Civil Rebellion. So it's always going to be honored to you. Shout out to Original Copper Empress, Aboriginal TV, all of those who open up their channel, embrace stuff with open arms. Definitely shout out to the chat for asking those excellent questions and being so engaged. If you have any questions, yeah, definitely feel free to ask them. We're always going to be located at the Lost Confederacy channel on YouTube. I'm sure we'll drop a link or something. I'll see if I can find a link for you all. But yeah, because we need to know this information, man.
Mikey wants to know when you coming back, dude.
When I'm coming back, let me see. I kind of gave a little sneak preview. I don't know if I should have said it, but that we're working through the Civil Rights Acts in the 1960s right now on our channel. Once we get through them, it's pretty much, from what I've got a brief preview of, it's going to be pretty much the end game, because the 1968 is going to be very key for us. So pretty much after we get through the Civil Rights Acts, we'll probably, as long as, Carrie and his channel will have us, we'll definitely join back.
Dude, when you ready, just a phone call away.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We locked in, man. We locked in.
All right, brother. Well, listen, I thank you for joining and sharing with us tonight. And I'm sure everybody in the chat does too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate everybody, man.
All
All
right,
right,
Chief Miko.
Tyrone. Yes, sir. All
We'll see
right,
you
take
next
care.
time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Have
All
a good
right.
one.
Peace.